Daniel Hayes stood at the window of the communications center and looked down at the planet below. 442b was different from Earth. The sky had a purple tint. The clouds moved in strange patterns, but after 3 years, this place felt like home to him. The colony was small but growing. About 200 humans lived here now. They worked on trade agreements with a species that controlled this entire sector of space. There were tall beings made of crystal. Their bodies reflected light in beautiful ways. They thought faster than humans. They built better technology. They seemed perfect in every way that mattered in the universe. Daniel was 38 years old. He had no wife. He had no children. His work was his life. He made sure the communications between the humans and the stayed smooth. He translated documents. He attended meetings where they explained their rules and the humans nodded and agreed. It was not exciting work, but it was important work. The message came at 3 in the morning station time. The colony's emergency system woke everyone. The transport ship called the Aurora had crashed on the northern continent. It was carrying refugees from a failed colony, people who had nowhere else to go. The ship went down in a storm. Nobody knew if anyone survived. Captain Martin called for volunteers immediately. The rescue team needed to move fast. The northern continent was dangerous. There were storms there. The terrain was rough. They said they would help, but Daniel knew what that meant. They would send drones and equipment. They would not risk their own lives. That was not their way. Daniel put on his suit and joined the team. 6 humans climbed into the transport shuttle. They flew north for 2 hours. The storm was worse when they got there. The wind pushed the shuttle around. Rain hit the windows hard, but they landed safely and got out. The Aurora was broken on the ground. Pieces of it were scattered everywhere. Fire still burned in some sections. The smell of chemicals and burning metal filled the air. Daniel and his team moved through the wreckage calling names. Most of the ship was crushed flat. They found people trapped in different parts of the ship. An old man was stuck under a metal beam. A young man had a broken leg and could not walk. A woman was unconscious but breathing. The team worked fast to get them out. Daniel pulled people from the wreckage. His hands bled. His suit got torn, but he did not stop. Then he heard a sound. A child was crying. The sound came from deep inside the broken ship, from a section that was crushed almost flat. Daniel moved toward it. Captain Martin grabbed his arm. "Do not go in there," Martin said. "That part is not stable. It will collapse." Daniel pulled his arm away. He could still hear the child crying. He crawled into the narrow space between twisted metal and broken seats. The air was thick with smoke and dangerous gases. His breathing mask filtered some of it, but not all. He found her in a small pocket of space. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with brown hair and scared eyes. Her name was Grace. She was trapped under a seat. Behind her, a woman was holding her. The woman was Grace's mother. Her name was Caroline. "Help," Caroline said. Her voice was weak but clear. "Please help my daughter." Daniel started to work. The seat was heavy. The metal was hot. He could see that if he moved it the wrong way, the whole section would fall. Caroline and Grace would be buried under tons of material. "I am going to shield you," Daniel said. "Do not move. Stay very still." He moved close to Grace and Caroline. He put his body between them and the falling metal. He used his hands to keep the seat from crushing down. His muscles burned. Sweat ran down his face. The metal cut into his back and his arms. "My team is getting equipment," he told Caroline. "They will get us out. Just hold still." Minutes passed. They felt like hours. Daniel's body shook with the effort of holding the metal up. His vision started to go dark, but he did not let go. He could not let go. If he let go, the child would die. If he let go, the mother would die. So he held on. Then he heard the sound of machinery. The rescue equipment had arrived. Daniel heard Captain Martin directing the workers. The heavy lift came through the wreckage. Slowly, carefully, it began to pull the metal away. The pressure on Daniel's back lessened. More workers came in. They pulled Daniel out. They pulled Caroline out. They pulled Grace out. Daniel fell to the ground. His body hurt. His back was bleeding badly. His arms were burned and cut. But when he looked back, he saw Caroline holding Grace tight. The child was alive. The mother was safe. The medical team came with a stretcher for Daniel. They took him to the shuttle. As they flew back to the colony, Daniel lost consciousness from the pain and the effort. He woke up in the medical center 2 days later. His back was wrapped in bandages. His arms were in medical sleeves that helped them heal. Dr. James stood next to his bed looking at the scans. "You were lucky," said. "The burns are serious, but you will heal. The cuts were deep, but they did not hit anything vital. You did a dangerous thing in that wreckage." "The child?" Daniel asked. "The child is fine. The mother is fine. They are both here in the colony now. The woman, Caroline, has been here every day asking about you." Daniel closed his eyes. The pain in his body was nothing compared to knowing that he had made the right choice. Grace was alive. Caroline was alive. That was all that mattered. What Daniel did not know was that someone had been watching. High above the planet in the orbital station, Queen Seventh had observed everything. She had sensors pointed at the colony. She had watched the rescue happen. She had analyzed Daniel's behavior. The Queen was made of crystal that glowed with inner light. Her mind worked in ways that humans could not understand. She processed information at speeds that would make a human brain burn out. She had ruled the empire for 400 years. She had seen countless species in her territory, but she had never seen a being do what Daniel had done. A human had endangered his own life. He had sacrificed his body. He had done it for a child that was not his, a child that shared no genetic line with him, a child that brought him no advantage. The human had done it because the child needed help. The human had done it because he could not let the child die. The Queen added this information to her data files. She marked it as important. She marked it as something she needed to understand. She gave an order to her advisors. "Bring me this human," she said. "I want to meet him. I want to understand why he did what he did." And so the chain of events began that would change everything. Daniel did not know it yet, but his choice to shield a stranger's child with his own body had caught the attention of the most powerful being in this sector of space. And the Queen of the was not someone you could refuse. Daniel slept in the medical center and dreamed of nothing. But in the orbital station above, the Queen waited. She waited to meet the human who had shown her something her logic could not explain. She waited to understand a thing called sacrifice, and she would not rest until she did. Daniel spent 3 weeks in the medical center. The burns on his back healed slowly. The cuts on his arms became pink scars. Doctors said he was lucky. The scars would fade over time. The burns would not cause permanent damage, but Daniel felt every bit of the pain as his body knitted itself back together. Caroline visited him almost every day. She would bring Grace with her. The little girl was quiet and serious. She had been through a lot. Her father was dead. The colony she lived in had failed. She had nearly died in the wreckage. For a child, that was too much to process, but she seemed to understand that Daniel had saved her life. On the 3rd day of visiting, Grace brought a picture she had drawn. It showed 2 people in a dark place and a man standing over them with his arms out. She had used red and orange markers to show fire. She had used black to show the metal and the darkness. The picture was not perfect, but it was clear. It showed what had happened. "This is you," Grace said, pointing at the man in the middle. "You saved us." Daniel felt something catch in his chest. He looked at the picture for a long time. It was just a child's drawing, but it meant everything to him. He was not a hero. He had just done what any person should do. But to Grace, he was the man who had stood between her and death. Caroline stood behind her daughter and watched Daniel look at the picture. She had tears in her eyes. She had lost so much in the colony failure. Her partner, Grace's father, had died in the initial disaster. She had thought she and Grace would die in the wreckage too. But this human, this stranger who had no reason to help them, had risked his own body to keep them safe. "Thank you," she said simply. "I do not have words, but thank you." Daniel looked up at her. "I did what I had to do. Grace deserved to live. You deserve to live." While Daniel recovered in the medical center, the Queen had been asking questions. She sent an official request to the colony's director, Captain Martin. She wanted to see Daniel. She wanted to talk to him. This was not a request that could be refused. When Daniel was strong enough to move, the colony's medical transport took him to the orbital station. The journey through space was quick. The station grew larger and larger as they approached. It was a massive structure, shaped like a crystal that had been cut and polished. Light bounced off its surfaces in calculated patterns. It was beautiful and cold. The Queen waited for him in a chamber that had high ceilings and transparent walls. Below, the entire planet was visible. Above, the stars stretched out to infinity. The Queen stood perfectly still. She was tall, more than 7 feet. Her body was made of crystal that glowed with soft light from within. Her voice, when she spoke, was like wind chimes made of ice. "I am Queen Seventh," she said. "I have observed your actions in the wreckage of the transport ship. I have studied the data. I do not understand your behavior. I want you to explain it to me." Daniel stood straight. He was scared, but he did not show it. "Your Majesty, I found a child and her mother trapped in the wreckage. They needed help. I provided that help." "But you put yourself in danger," the Queen said. "Your bones could have been crushed. Your organs could have been damaged. You could have died. The child was not your genetic offspring. The mother had no connection to you. You received no benefit from this action. Yet you chose to risk your life. This is not logical." Daniel thought about this for a moment. He had never really thought about why he did it. It had just seemed like the right thing to do. "It is logical to help people in danger," he said. "In my species, we are taught to value life. A child's life, an adult's life, all life has value. When I see someone dying, I cannot just walk away. It goes against who I am." The Queen's crystal form seemed to shift slightly as she processed this information. "In the Empire, we value efficiency and logic. We preserve our own genetic line. We do not waste resources on beings that cannot benefit our survival." "But the child is alive now," Daniel said. "Her mother is alive. They can contribute to the colony. They can create art and music and ideas. They can have children. In the long view, saving them was logical." The Queen circled Daniel slowly, examining him from all angles. "You believe this. Your neural patterns show no deception. You truly see the value in saving strangers." "Yes," Daniel said, "I do." They talked for hours. The Queen asked him about human history, human wars, human art. She asked him why humans created music that did not serve any practical purpose. She asked him why humans kept pictures of their dead. She asked him why humans felt love and fear and sadness. Daniel answered as best as he could. He explained that humans were not purely logical beings. They made decisions based on feeling and hope and trust. They valued things that could not be measured. They created beauty not because it was efficient, but because it made them feel alive. The Queen listened to everything. She recorded every word. She analyzed his biology, his brain patterns, his emotional responses. She was trying to understand the human species in a way that no had ever tried before. "You will return to the colony," the Queen finally said. "But I will call for you again. I have many questions that need answers. You have shown me that my knowledge is incomplete. The human species contains elements that I do not fully understand. That troubles me." Daniel bowed respectfully. "I will come whenever you call, Your Majesty." When he returned to the colony, Caroline was waiting at the landing pad. She embraced him carefully, aware of his healing wounds. Grace held his hand and did not let go. "She kept asking about you," Caroline said. "Grace would not eat, she would not sleep. She just kept asking when you would come back." Daniel knelt down and looked Grace in the eyes. I am back now, and I am going to stay in this colony. We will see each other. Do not worry." But even as he said it, Daniel knew that the Queen had not finished with him. She had marked him as interesting. She wanted to understand him. And in the Empire, when the Queen wanted something, it happened. There was no refusal. There was no escape. For now, though, Daniel could be with Caroline and Grace. For now, they could try to build some kind of normal life together. But in the orbital station above, the Queen was already planning. She was already deciding what she wanted to do with the interesting human who had shown her something she had never seen before. In the nights that followed, Daniel would look up at the stars and wonder what the future held. He had saved a child, and now that act of sacrifice was going to change everything. 3 months passed. Daniel returned to work in the communication center. His body healed completely. The scars on his back faded to pale lines. He stopped thinking about the rescue every single day. Life fell into a new routine. Caroline found work as a botanist in the colony's agricultural section. The colony needed help growing food in the alien soil. Her knowledge of plants and soil chemistry was valuable. She worked long hours, but she earned enough to rent a small house. Grace went to school. She made friends. She learned about 442b and its plants and animals. Daniel would visit their home in the evenings. He would help Grace with her lessons. He would eat dinner with Caroline and listen to her talk about the plants she was studying. It was a simple life. It was a good life. It was the kind of life Daniel had never thought he would have. Grace began to call him Uncle Daniel. It was her own choice. He did not ask her to do it, but she seemed to need a name for him that meant something more than just a friend. Uncle Daniel meant family. Uncle Daniel meant he would always be there. One evening, as Daniel sat with Caroline on the porch of her small house watching the purple sunset, she took his hand. "I want you to know something," she said. "What you did for us in that wreckage, I think about it every day. I think about the fact that I might have lost Grace, and then I think about the fact that a complete stranger chose to put his body between her and death. That is not something I will ever forget." Daniel squeezed her hand. "I would do it again, without any hesitation." "I know you would," Caroline said. "That is why I trust you. That is why I am willing to let Grace get attached to you, because I know you will never let us down." They sat in silence as the sun went down and the stars came out. On this world, the stars looked different than they did on Earth, but they were still beautiful. They were still a reminder of how vast the universe was. The message came at dawn. The Queen's official seal was on the transmission. The colony's director, Captain Martin, had to deliver it in person. He came to Daniel's apartment in the communication building. He looked uncomfortable and angry. "The Queen has made a demand," Martin said. "It is not a request. It is an order. She wants you to work for her directly. As a cultural integration advisor, it is a newly created position. She specifically asked for you." Daniel felt his stomach drop. For how long? The message does not say. It could be months. It could be years. The Queen does not always specify time limits. She wants you to report to the orbital station immediately. There is a transport waiting at the landing pad. "I cannot just abandon my post here," Daniel said. "You can and you must," Martin replied. His voice was firm. "This is a direct order from the Queen of the Empire. If you refuse, it will damage our relationship with them. It could harm the entire colony. You know that." Daniel did know it. In the system, their Queen's word was law. Refusing was not an option if you wanted to stay in her territory, and the colony depended on staying in her territory. He went to tell Caroline and Grace. Caroline cried when he explained it. She did not cry in front of Grace, but Daniel could see her hands shaking. Grace just stared at him with wide eyes, not quite understanding what this meant. "How long?" Caroline asked. "I do not know," Daniel said. "The Queen did not specify." "Will we be able to visit?" "I will ask. I will tell her that I need to stay connected to you both. I will tell her that I will not stay unless she allows visits." It was a risk. The queen could refuse. She could order him to sever all connections with the colony, but Daniel had to try. He could not accept a life of complete separation from Caroline and Grace. They held each other that night. Grace slept between them. When morning came, Daniel had to leave. The transport was sleek and fast. It rose from the landing pad and climbed into the sky. Daniel watched through the window as the colony became smaller and smaller. Caroline and Grace stood on the ground watching him go. He raised his hand. Caroline raised her hand back. When he arrived at the orbital station, the Queen was waiting in her chamber. The view of the planet below was even more beautiful from this angle. Daniel could see the entire day side of 442b. "You have arrived," the Queen said. "I have prepared quarters for you. You will live here now. You will work with my advisors and my council. You will teach us about human behavior and human culture. In exchange, you will have resources and comfort." "Your Majesty," Daniel said, "I have one condition." Silence. The Queen's crystal form seemed to pause. It was clear that no one had ever made a condition with her before. "The woman and child who survived the wreckage, they are important to me. I need to see them. I need to know that they are well. I will not agree to stay unless you allow them to visit me, and unless you protect them and ensure they are cared for." The Queen processed this for a long time. Her advisors shifted nervously. Making demands to the Queen was dangerous. "This is an emotional attachment," the Queen said finally. "You are motivated by feeling, not logic." "Yes," Daniel said, "I am, but I will work better if I know they are safe and if I can see them." The Queen seemed to consider this. "Your efficiency would decrease if you were distressed. Therefore, allowing visits would improve your work output. This is logical." "Yes," Daniel agreed, even though he knew there was more to it than logic. "They may visit once every month," the Queen decided, "and I will assign a protection detail to ensure they are safe in the colony. This is acceptable." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Daniel said. He was led to his quarters. They were large but spare, like everything they designed, but the Queen had left instructions. There was a window that looked out at the planet. There was a workspace with computers and screens, and there was a message waiting from the colony. It was from Caroline. It said simply, "We will see you next month. Stay strong." Daniel sat at the window and watched the planet turn slowly below him. He thought about what he had sacrificed to come here, but he also thought about what he might save. If he could help the Queen understand humanity, if he could bridge the gap between the two species, maybe it would all be worth it. In the distance, the stars burned cold and bright. Daniel had left Earth to explore new worlds. He had never imagined that his greatest exploration would be helping an alien queen understand what it meant to be human. But that was his life now. That was his purpose. And somehow that made the separation from Caroline and Grace more bearable. 1 year passed. The orbital station became Daniel's world. He moved through its crystal corridors, attending meetings, teaching lessons, answering questions. The Queen consulted him on everything. She wanted to understand why humans made art. She wanted to know why humans loved. She wanted to comprehend why humans fought wars over ideas instead of just resources. Daniel explained human history in ways the Queen could process. He talked about wars fought for freedom and for ideas. He explained philosophy and poetry. He described music and how it moved people emotionally. He showed her human art and architecture. With every explanation, the Queen added to her knowledge of humanity. But the work was not easy. The thought in ways that were fundamentally different from humans. Their culture was pure logic and efficiency. They could not understand why humans would create something beautiful when they could create something practical. They could not understand why humans loved art that served no purpose. One day, the Queen brought Daniel to a meeting with her council. There were 6 others there, all high-ranking advisors. They were skeptical of the human. They did not see the value in studying human behavior. They thought the Queen was wasting time and resources. Humans are unpredictable, one advisor said. They make poor decisions. They are driven by emotion instead of logic. They cannot be trusted to keep agreements because they change their minds based on feeling. Daniel listened to this. He was angry, but he kept his voice calm. Humans are different he said, but that does not make us inferior. Our emotions are not a weakness. They are a strength. When humans care about something, we will fight for it. We will not abandon it just because it is not efficient. We will sacrifice for people we love. We will take risks for ideals we believe in. That is reckless, another advisor said. No, Daniel replied. It is commitment. It is loyalty. It is something that pure logic cannot create. A will keep an agreement because it is logical to do so. A human will keep an agreement because they gave their word and their word matters. That is more reliable than logic. The Queen watched this exchange carefully. At the end of the meeting, she called Daniel to her private chamber. You spoke well, she said, but my advisors are right to question this. The Empire has ruled this sector for thousands of years through logic and efficiency. Are you telling me that human emotion is somehow superior to our way? No, Daniel said. I am not saying one is superior. I am saying they are different. And sometimes different is valuable. Sometimes you need emotion. Sometimes you need people who will care about something beyond logic. The Queen's crystal form shifted in the light. You miss them, the woman and the child. Your emotion about them affects your thinking. Yet you still function, you still work effectively. You still teach me what I need to know. This is remarkable. Because I am motivated, Daniel said. I work hard because there is something I care about. I am not just completing a task. I am working towards something meaningful. Caroline and Grace visited once a month. Each visit, Grace was taller. Each visit, she was smarter and more curious. She asked questions about the orbital station She wanted to understand why they were shaped the way they were. She wanted to know how their crystal minds worked. One month, Grace brought a gift for the Queen. She had carved a figure out of stone, a representation of the Queen made with careful study and accuracy. The shape was right. The proportions were correct. It was a gift made with respect and understanding. The Queen accepted it and held it in her crystal hands for a long time. The child has observed me carefully, the Queen said. She has understood proportion and symmetry. This is logical thinking. Grace is intelligent, Caroline said. She gets that from her mother, but she also has a heart. She cares about people. She cares about doing the right thing. She inherited these traits from her mother, the Queen said. Yet the male Daniel has shown her how to care. He has taught her that sacrifice has value. That is not genetic inheritance. That is cultural teaching. The Queen placed the stone figure in her private chamber. From that day forward, she referred to Grace as the child who understands elegance. As the months turned into a year, Daniel could see a change in the Queen. She still operated from logic and efficiency, but her decisions began to include human considerations. When the Empire dealt with other species, she started to ask how it would affect them. She began to consider mercy as well as law. I am changing, the Queen told Daniel one day. You are changing how I think. It is uncomfortable. Logic is predictable, but your way introduces variables. Yet I find the results are sometimes better than pure logic would suggest. Daniel spent his evenings in his quarters looking down at the planet. Caroline and Grace were there. He could see the continent where they lived. He could not see them directly, but he knew they were there. He imagined Grace playing in her school. He imagined Caroline working in the gardens. He held onto those images to keep going. One evening, the Queen found him at the window. You are unhappy, she observed. I miss them, Daniel said. I miss seeing them every day. I miss hearing Grace laugh. I miss talking to Caroline. Your contract is complete, the Queen said. I have the knowledge I need about human behavior. You have served your purpose. You may return to the colony. Daniel turned to look at the Queen. Was she letting him go? Could he finally leave? "But I do not want you to leave," the Queen continued. "I want you to stay, not as a prisoner or a servant, but as an advisor and a teacher. I want to continue learning from you, and I want to change the Empire. I want to introduce human values into our culture. Will you help me do this?" Daniel thought about this. He could go back to the colony and be with Caroline and Grace. They could have a simple life. But he could also stay here and shape the future of an entire civilization. He could show them that there was more to existence than pure logic. "Let me ask for something," Daniel said. "Let me ask that Caroline and Grace be allowed to stay here, not just to visit, to live, to be part of this." The Queen processed this. They would be the only humans on this station. It would be unusual. "Yes," Daniel agreed, "but unusual is sometimes good." The Queen's crystal form seemed to glow brighter. "I will allow this. Bring them here, and we will see what happens when two cultures truly begin to understand each other." That night Daniel sent a message to Caroline. "Come stay with me. The Queen has agreed. We can be together." The response came quickly. "We are coming. Grace wants to see your crystal palace." For the first time since he had arrived at the station, Daniel felt truly happy. He had not had to choose between his duty and his love. The Queen had given him both. Caroline and Grace arrived at the orbital station in a transport. They climbed out into the docking bay looking small and fragile in their human suits. Daniel was waiting for them. When he saw them, he felt something in his chest release. A tension he had been holding for a year finally loosened. Grace ran to him and threw her arms around his waist. She was older now. She was 9 years old. She had grown taller, but she was still the same girl he had saved. "You live in a crystal palace," Grace said, looking around at the smooth walls and the way light bounced through the station. "It is beautiful." "Come," Daniel said, "I will show you your home." The quarters they would share were larger than Daniel's alone had been. The Queen had given them a section of the station overlooking the planet. There were rooms for Caroline and Grace. There was a workspace for Daniel. There was a garden where Caroline could grow plants from Earth and from 442b. It was beautiful and peaceful. But not everyone was happy about the humans on the station. The advisors protested to the Queen. They said that humans were unpredictable. They said that having them on the station would disrupt efficiency. They said that the Queen was making emotional decisions instead of logical ones. The Queen listened to their complaints. Then she made a decision. "We will begin a new program," she announced. "The Human Cultural Center. Daniel will run it. We will send students to learn about human culture, human history, and human values. We will exchange knowledge between our two species. This is not emotion. This is strategy. Understanding other species makes us stronger." The advisors could not argue with that. It was logical, but it also served the Queen's goal of bringing the two species closer together. The work began immediately. Students came to the center, young who had not yet formed rigid opinions about humanity. Daniel taught them about human art and music and literature. Caroline helped them understand how humans lived in harmony with nature. Grace, without trying, showed them how a human child thought and played and imagined. Grace became the first true bridge between the two species. She was not afraid of them. She did not see them as alien and strange. She saw them as interesting. She asked them questions. She showed them her drawings. She told them stories about Earth and about the colony on 442b. One young named Minor became Grace's friend. Minor was curious about everything. She wanted to know why humans wrote fiction when they could study facts. Grace explained that fiction taught people how to feel. It taught them to understand other beings. It taught them to care. Minor came back to the center every day after that. She read all the stories Grace could find. She began to create her own stories. She began to think about emotion as more than just a malfunction. Months passed. The Human Cultural Center became the most popular place on the orbital station. Even the advisors who had opposed it began to visit. They attended lectures. They read human books. They looked at human art. Slowly, without admitting it, they began to understand. One afternoon, the Queen summoned Daniel to her chamber. It was not a formal summons. It was an invitation. Daniel went and found the Queen standing at the window, looking down at the planet below. "I have been thinking," the Queen said. "When you first arrived, you had a contract. It was for a limited time. That time has passed. You have completed your work. I have learned what I needed to learn. You are free to leave." Daniel felt his heart sink. Was the Queen sending him away? "But I do not want you to leave," the Queen continued. "Instead, I want to offer you something new. I want you to stay as a permanent advisor to the Crown. I want you to help me reshape the culture. I want to introduce new ways of thinking into our society. Will you do this?" "Your Majesty," Daniel said, "I would be honored, but I have a question. Will Caroline and Grace be allowed to stay as well? Will they be safe here?" "They will not just be safe," the Queen said. "They will be protected and valued members of this society. Grace will continue her education here. Caroline will continue her work with plants. And you will work with me to create something new, something that combines the logic of with the heart of humanity." That evening, Daniel told Caroline and Grace the news. "We are staying," Grace asked. Her eyes were wide. "We are not going back to the colony." "We are staying," Daniel said. "This is our home now." Caroline put her arms around both of them. "I came to this world thinking I had lost everything, and instead I found you. And now I have found a whole new world to call home." Years passed. The Human Cultural Center became famous throughout the sector. Other alien species came to learn about human values. The Empire's policies changed. They became less about pure efficiency and more about balance. They still valued logic, but they also began to value compassion and creativity. Grace grew up on the orbital station. She became a bridge builder like Daniel, helping alien species understand each other. She told stories about the rescue and the wreckage, and through those stories, she taught other species about sacrifice and courage. Caroline's plants grew in the station's gardens. They created beauty and oxygen and life. The garden became a place where came to think about things beyond pure logic. The beauty of the plants made them understand why humans valued art and nature. Daniel lived between two worlds. He was human, but he thought like a. He was loyal to Earth and humanity, but he had dedicated his life to the Empire. It should not have worked. It should have been impossible. But it worked because one human had chosen to shield a child, and that choice had echoed across the stars. One day, when Grace was 16 years old, she asked Daniel why he had stayed. "I stayed because it mattered," Daniel said. "I stayed because I could change things. And I stayed because your mother and you were here. I could not leave you." "I am glad," Grace said. "You taught me that courage is not about being strong. It is about protecting people you care about, even when it costs you, even when it is hard. You taught me that by your actions." The Queen was still Queen when Daniel turned 70 years old. She had lived longer than any human. Her crystal form still glowed with inner light, but now it was a light that included warmth as well as logic. She called Daniel to her chamber one final time. "You have changed my entire civilization," she said. "You have shown us that there is more to existence than efficiency. You have shown us that emotion and logic can coexist. When you die, your body will fail, but your influence will continue. That is a kind of immortality that I, with all my logic, did not know existed." "You gave me the chance to do it," Daniel said. "You let me stay. You let Caroline and Grace come. You gave me the chance to make a difference." The Queen's form seemed to shimmer. "I did this because you intrigued me, but I continue it because it is right. You taught me the difference." When Daniel finally died, at the age of 83, the entire empire mourned. They held a ceremony that combined human traditions with traditions. They told stories about the human who had changed everything. They planted his ashes in Caroline's gardens. Caroline lived another 10 years after that. She worked in the gardens and told people about the man she had loved. Grace carried on his work, building bridges between species. And in the orbital station, in the Crystal Palace high above 442b, the Queen kept the stone figure that Grace had carved. It sat in her chamber as a reminder that sometimes the most logical choice is to follow your heart. Sometimes, understanding is more powerful than weapons. And sometimes, one human's choice to shield a child can change the entire future of civilization itself. The humans who came after Daniel never forgot what he had done. They never forgot that courage and compassion could reshape the stars. And the, who had once valued only logic, learned that emotion and reason together could create something greater than either one alone. The wreckage of the Aurora had contained a child who would have died, but a man chose to stand between her and destruction, and that choice echoed across time and space, proving that small acts of kindness could have consequences that reached beyond understanding. That is what humanity was. That is what made them valuable in the universe. That is what the Queen finally learned.